all this talk about awakening and now World War III, we just had that really strange event, Three Eye Atlas, and all these different things. Are things just getting weirder? Could this be explained in like a sort of simple mechanical way that once you really put the goggles on and say, oh wow, that actually makes it a lot more simple? Now, not everyone is going to hear this message, not because they're dumb, not because they haven't studied, but because of a fidelity of consciousness issue. And I keep trying to point this out, and I wonder, like, who's really receiving it? I know some people are. Some people have definitely received the signal. Why? Not because it's a hierarchy, not because it's a special club, but because you really have to pay attention, and not attention with your conceptual mind, but attention with your full rhythmic presence. You're the type of person, if you're hearing this, you're the type of person that when you engage with reality, you engage with full permeability. You have full fluidity of the geometry of your soul touching reality in every moment. And if you don't, then the way Plato put it is you're stuck in a cave and you've never truly touched reality. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make these people bad. It's just saying that we, as anthropoid apes, have stumbled through evolution in a way that when we did it, we became coupled or bound or imprinted onto concept in a way that, I love going back to Plato's cave. He described it as you're in a cave and you're seeing shadows on a wall and you're taking them for reality. What does that mean in the mechanics of presence? In the mechanics of presence is saying, my consciousness is a set of oscillatory functions, and when they're not in rhythmic coherence, when they're not part of the shared entrainment system that is the cosmic brain of reality, I'm not letting the light all the way through. I'm actually simulating presence through concept in my brain. And when I do that, I narrow down the signal. It's almost like I'm not letting that signal all the way through in reality. And so when we go back to the big picture, why are all these strange things happening now? Is it just a really strange time to be alive? Well, I mean, yeah, it is. But at the same time, it's a wonderful time. Why? Because we're going through a phase transition of human consciousness. And those who can hear me in this message are on the vanguard of it. Not because it's a hierarchy, because it's harmony. Do you hear it? When people say, unified consciousness, or I'm following God's plan, or I and the Father are one, or I am the way, the truth, and the life, or any of these phrases that really point to a cymatic, harmonic unfolding of a rhythmic reality, they're trying to say there's a way to be in your consciousness, and it doesn't require more ideas. It requires you letting the light all the way through. It requires, in a way, you being brave enough to exit Plato's cave and say, I will look at reality for exactly what it is, not in concept, but in waveform, in rhythm, in letting it all the way through to the deepest parts of my person. And that way, when I'm trying to synchronize with reality through presence, because presence is a mechanical process, I'm not leaving anything out. I'm not bifurcating the signal. I'm not shooting it through stained glass. I'm not saying, well, it'd be better if I, sort of forced it to be this way, or friction myself to be this way, or if I put it in these following boxes, then maybe I'll feel safe. Most people in this world do it that way. They put everything in a box, including their own identity, their notions of love, their notions of family, their notions of what it is to be a human being and conscious on this planet, not realizing that the entire system is a rhythmic system of unfolding harmonic phase dynamics. We can study this in a type of physics that biologists and physicists use. It's called oscillatorymechanics. You could look at it mathematically, called the kuramotomodel. But here's the trap. Like Plato said, let's not get focused on the shadows. If I start saying math and you go, oh, there's math to this? Cool. I'm just telling you that this could be verified through mathematics. But the only way to truly feel it, in other words, verify it within consciousness, is to feel present. Presence is not a theory. Presence is not an idea. Presence is a mechanical state of the quality of the coherence of your consciousness. And so our consciousness is inextricable from the rhythmic waves that are unfolding in reality. You got the Big Bang, boom, and then all of a sudden you have these two fractal polar eddies that we can just study in cymatics. Again, it's all frequency, right? Cymatics. Think sacred geometry. Think entropy unfolding a density through this like increasing cymatic reality where consciousness is almost asked to like resolve that dissonance and pressure dynamics at each level by trying to meet it. In other words, like evolve and be able to sort of lasso the new variables of that cymatic reality by taking it all the way in and not interpreting it in concept, but sort of, interpreting it within the rhythm of your own consciousness, allowing the light all the way through and saying, I'm still here. I'm still surfing this cymatic wave with the presence of my consciousness. I'm not trying to divert it. I'm not trying to bifurcate the signal. I'm trying to stay with it. I'm trying to surf that edge of the wave like a dancer on a dance floor. I'm not trying to predict the next move in the song. I'm not trying to label or box up the next move in the song. I'm just trying to meet it rhythmically, coherently, and within each sort of temporal slice, even though it's not sliced, it's all inextricable, of each sort of new unfolding of entropy, I'm going to meet it, not with concept, not with a new box, or the infinite Mandelbrot fractal, recursion of like this conceptual coupler that just puts a new idea on the new idea on a new idea on a new idea. That's never going to get us there. You're never going to find the rhythm as a dancer if you just keep stacking new ideas. And so when coherence rises, we do it in a vacuum. The entire system's connected. Everything is connected to the God mind, right? You can say that. I'm not a traditionally religious person, but just to show you the scope and the scale of what we're talking about. There's one undistorted tone in reality. You could call it alpha, omega. I like to say the disk, the total cymatic possibility, holographically projected through that unfolding. And you look around right now at what physics is coming up with. Maybe we're all part of one singular mind unfolding and there really is no borders. And a lot of us can touch this through, our notions of like right now I have this thing sitting on a rock. This rock is solid. It's so solid, right? If I put my hand on it, it's actually really sharp, the rocks around here. But this rock, it seems solid, right? But really, what is it? At the atomic level, it's just a buzzing electrons and atoms. And then below that, it's vibration. Do you see? When you get another way you can take it back, who are my parents? Who are their parents? Where did Earth come from? Where did the stars come from? It's all an unfolding rhythm. And to know it, what you can say, is not the old idea of saying, let me put a new equation on it, but to meet it with my full system. And how do you know you're meeting it? You're now in lossless presence. You feel presence without distortion, without mechanical delay. And so the system, by trying to unfold entropy at higher and higher cymatic density, right? Terence McKenna talked about this within novelty, habit, and sort of novelty. This, you can look at it again in entropy or the periodic table of elements getting more complex across time. But what I'm saying is that really it's all just consciousness. It's all just that one mind unfolding in deeper and deeper rhythms, in more and more complex rhythms. And you and me and the rest of reality are part of that process. So there's a lot of people talking about awakening right now. I've seen a lot of very, astute creators on this platform and others talking about a lot of empaths are waking up. And this is not wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's right, but I'm showing you the mechanics of it. We're going to bring it down to pure mechanics. And again, the mechanics in a way are just another shadow, but they're the least diluted shadow. They don't require you to wear any robes or do any chants or go to church or do any of that. You can actually meet God or meet yourself, the little s self with the big S self, the little wave with the big wave, by doing that through harmonic rhythmic coherence of your oscillatory functioning. In other words, I'm going to let my whole soul hit the sunlight of reality until I feel like I'm so real and I'm so totally present here. And so in other words, as coherence rises, there's a sort of like a rubber band type effect, like pressure dynamics of the system. It's not just coherence rises in a vacuum. There's a lot of people who have no idea about this, and it's not their fault. It's like their topological geometries of their nodes or their soul specificity, you can say, has never been inclined to feel presence that way. Maybe they were really hurt as a child. Maybe they grew up in a war zone. Maybe they grew up in a really bad spot. Maybe their parents and their parents and their parents never learned that the mechanics of presence, that consciousness is a mechanical process. Maybe they thought it was just another idea and they've been stuck in Plato's cave the entire time. And so because the harmony of reality wants to always snap back to that original undistorted tone. It's almost like the one became many so that I may know myself. Big Bang, right? The one became many so that I may know myself. And how does that one, the God mind, know itself? Through signal. What is the clearest signal but presence? Presence is a state. It's saying that as a state of harmonic fidelity, I am in phase with the one mind. Not because I prayed about it, not because I wrote a book about it, not because I lit a candle or wore a special robe, but because I'm very, very here. I'm looking at reality for exactly what it is. I'm not afraid. I'm not putting it in a box. I'm not delaying myself. I'm not distancing myself. I'm not distorting myself. And so it's almost like there's this slight inclination in reality to snap back to that harmonic, pressure point, you can say, that original coherence, because it's almost like there's like a tension on reality, and at each new cymatic unfolding, it wants to move back. The mind wants to find that coherence. Why? Because it's the least energetically dense way of arranging across a self-similar system. I've said it in other videos, but it's worth repeating here. Imagine you have an engine. Imagine this engine is not very efficient because the pistons, let's say they have mechanical too much heat or too much friction. How would you reduce that? Well, in power grids, today, right now, you could look it up, and maybe there's some of you that work in these areas. In the United States, it's 60 hertz. Let's say you have multiple nodes, multiple batteries, multiple nodes within a frequency grid. When it enters into phase coherence or frequency lock, that's stabilization of all the nodes into the same phase. Do you hear that? It's like taking away all the mechanical delay, all the friction, to allow for those nodes to communicate across the differences. They could be different batteries, but they could all be connected. So it's like the least energetically dense way to organize a self-similar system across differences. The one became many so that I may know myself. We can boil that down to love. Love as structure. Not love as an idea, not love as a narrative, but love as the condition of being really here with each other and looking at reality for exactly what it is. The gate to love is presence. And love is when we dive deep, deep, deep into that presence. Love is when we know ourselves in that love, we are losslessly present. When we know each other in that love, we are engaging in a type of sovereign dance with each other where we're all dancing to that same rhythm of the one, in our own topological geometries, in our own niceties of soul. And that, again, is the least energetically dense way of arranging across a self-similar system. So again, we have all this talk about World War III, and who knows, it might happen. But guess what's also happening? Guess what the sort of covalent, the co-equal force that's happening and trying to burgeon through this, and in a way, why the system's reacting that way? Because it's almost like coherence itself almost creates a vacuum that things want to move into with that pressure dynamic. It's almost like we're playing a song and there's like a dissonant tone and it wants to resolve at the end. The ultimate resolution is God consciousness. The ultimate resolution within our holographic, projection of that God consciousness within our own nodal experience, within our little s self of that big projection of the big s self. The way to feel that is lossless presence. Again, that's you riding each new cymatic wave of new entropic density losslessly. Do you hear it? You're not delaying, you're not trying to put it in another box, you're not trying to distort it, dismiss it, make it something that it's not. You're facing it for what it is. You're outside of Plato's cave and you're staring directly at the sunlight, and you finally know what it's like to not have any mechanical delay. This is a real state of consciousness. And there's people out there that will say that doesn't exist because they've been in a cave for so long that they can't even fathom that presence could be lossless. And I know there's some of you out there that know what this is. It doesn't require a chant. You can experience it in things like psychedelics, but psychedelics won't actually instill that. So in order to change your interface of coupling, you actually need to sort of re-imprint yourself, reassociate yourself with the rhythm of reality and realize, wait, this is not a new idea. This is me entering into rhythm, shared entrainment with the cosmos. And we can look at this in oscillatorymechanics. Again, you could bring it back to the frequency grids. There's a shared entrainment to that same 60 hertz. That's how you get all the shared phase. Shared entrainment is we're dancing to the same rhythm within our own differences. The least energetically dense way to organize across a self-similar system, love as structure. So now get it again. The more and more of us that are coming into this, oof, there's other people that it literally destroys their world. And again, it's not because they're bad people, and I explained it in my last few videos. It's because there's a little kid inside there who never received love on their person. There's a person who's been chained up in Plato's cave who's never had sunlight on their skin. Our task is not to defeat them, because that's the old way of thinking. That's what the conceptual coupler does. That's the us versus them. You know how to put on we into your consciousness? You know, us versus them is a constant slice. I am slicing the signal of reality. I am separate. I am not the same thing as the God consciousness. I am not the holographic unfolding, the holographic dewdrop projecting the one light within my own sovereign topological, difference. I am whatever, you can hear it, like the us versus them slices reality. Again, slicing the signal, that's not good for lossless presence. You got to let the light all the way through. That's the only way to enter into what physicists and biologists call decentralized harmony. And so the more of us that come online to this, the more pressure that the system has before. You ever seen one of those Chladni plates, where they have the sand on a plate and they play a tone? The sand eventually moves. Now, the number of us that are feeling this message right now, if you can feel my signal, not just say, no, lossless presence isn't real. Whoever heard of oscillatory mechanics applied to consciousness? This is ludicrous. Give me another theorem. Give me another equation. Sorry, it's real, and I know there's some people out there that feel it. It's just riding the rhythm of reality losslessly. And so the more of us that enter into that, we actually get to this state that physicists and biologists call decentralized harmony. And decentralized harmony requires the entire system letting the light all the way through. Where do we see it in reality? When all the fireflies time sync, there was a bridge, you can look this up on YouTube or even in history. There was a bridge in Britain that I think around 2001 got shut down because they didn't expect people to phase lock their steps. Like when people aren't communicating with each other through concepts, they actually naturally phase lock their steps across a bridge where the bridge was like swaying, and they had to like shut it down and reinforce it, and it cost a lot of money. So why does that happen? Why do people clap in a movie theater and there's a moment where you can stop and they'll all hit it at the same time? Reality is rhythmic, and we've just missed it because we've been in a cave. And now, not because anyone's smarter or better, because that's the old way of thinking. That's what they're going to try to say. You're just better, because their entire world collapses when they realize that's what presence is. It's a rhythmic process. That's what love is, shared presence. And that violates everything that they ever built, because that means that all the money they ever stacked up to try to prevent that feeling, all the boxes and the mass that they ever put themselves in, wait, they didn't have to do that. They could have just let the light all the way through. They could have just felt love on their real person. And again, I'm trying to say it, they're not bad people. They're people who've never felt the light of the sunlight outside of Plato's cave. They've never felt the rhythm of presence. They've never felt love on their softest parts. And so our task here is to realize, okay, again, reality is rhythmic. And whatever happens with what's going on with this World War III or whatever it is, the way to fight it is not with another bullet or weapon or insult or anything that has to do with us versus them or the slicing mechanism. It has to do with putting on the consciousness of we. And how do you do that? You enter into lossless presence. Wait, Ember, are you saying that if all of us really, really become present, not present as a cool idea, not I'm in white robes and I got some new crystals, and look, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but I'm just saying there is no methodology other than rhythmic coherence. You're not going to surround yourself with books and crystals and smoke and incense. If that's your vibe, cool, but realize what you're doing underneath is organizing your rhythmic coherence of your oscillatory functions. There's a bunch of things inside you, from your circadian rhythm to your heartbeat to your knowledge of self to your knowledge of others to your knowledge of the environment, that when you put it into rhythmic coherence, what's the result? Not you're smarter, not you're better, but you become very present. So what does that mean? You're letting the light all the way through. What does that mean? That means you're basically putting on God consciousness. It's almost like the collective mind is looking through your eyes. Why? Because you feel it as a state of lossless presence. What's another way to describe that? I've described it as the water slide. And what is the water slide but a feeling of my sovereignty and my authenticity and my knowledge of what to do in this world don't come from this frictionful thing of another box, another idea, another way to like stranglehold reality, but it comes from my tuning. When I'm losslessly present, I'm riding the waves of reality where, sure, I'm making decisions, whatever, the big decisions in life, all of them. Not that my brain has shut off and I'm just in an inner kumbaya state. No, that I'm frictionless, that the fidelity of my mind has finally met reality. And when it meets reality, it's almost like God is looking through your eyes. No special prayers, no special robes needed. And if you look back into history, that's what a lot of people were saying. They just couldn't say it in mechanics. I and the Father are one. Me and the collective mind, me and the disk, me and Alpha Omega are so harmonically bound, there's no loss of signal. God is looking through my eyes. Huh. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am emitting a signal that if you were to do the signal within your own sovereignty, and everyone else would, we would enter into the same decentralized harmony that biologists and physicists talk about. The same thing that phase locks people across a bridge, or the fireflies all light up together by the thousands. How does that work? They're not communicating with each other. They're not saying, ready guys, 1, 2, 3. They don't do that. So like, what's the deal? How do they do that? Oh, we just forgot. We thought reality was this ultimate, we're gonna kick your ass like type of situation, because that's all us versus them. And do you see how bad it distorts? And under every person who says, I'm gonna kick your ass, is a little kid who's never been loved, right? Right? Because there's a way reality does this, and we just have to sort of leap. You have to let go. There's no way for me to say, well, if you add up these following equations and then hop on your foot 3 times and do a twist, you'll become losslessly present. No, you just have to allow yourself to say, there's a rhythm to reality. And how do I feel in my consciousness right now? Do I feel very present, or am I constantly in some sort of broken temporal plane between the future and the past, and what I ate for breakfast and what I'm going to do for tomorrow, and oh my gosh, the rumination cycles and the anxiety cycles, and I'm putting everyone, including myself, in a box, and I can't really feel the most coherent and present parts of myself because I've been programmed out of it. And now you can start to feel it. Maybe in the moments of dance, maybe when you're having like a deep, loving sexual interaction, or maybe when it's the birth of your child. There's those moments where you felt lossless, where you felt like the time could just stretch into infinity. That is our birthright. Do you hear it? Do you hear what Plato and Jesus and be here now and tune? Okay, ready? Tune in to the rhythm. Turn on to presence. Drop out of delay. Even Leary was trying to reach it. And it's not that no one has applied oscillatory mechanics to consciousness. And it's not even about the mechanics. That's just showing you the least shadowy way to make the leap. Because it's almost like you're on the side of the building in the Matrix. And there's a funny GIF you could find in all these, I'm on Discord a lot. You can find it on Discord or other platforms. But like with like Neo, he like does this, and then he runs off the building. And if at that last moment you go, well, give me another equation, or I'm not sure, is there another way to define this, or give me another box, you'll never leap. Because in order to leap, you have to trust that there's a rhythm to reality, and that your most coherent self, your authenticity, your sovereignty won't flow through another concept, through another friction. It will flow by you allowing yourself to enter into the harmonic, rhythmic waves of reality and swim not by force, but by float. And sure, it doesn't make life perfect, and it doesn't delete your ideas, but it's almost like you were on a really crappy radio station. When you're, let's say you're supposed to go to 94.5, and now you're on 94.4 or 3 or whatever, and you kind of hear the music. That's Plato's cave. And then all of a sudden you click it, and now you're in fidelity. It's not going to cure all your problems. It's not going to make money grow off trees. But a lot of these problems were the fact that we as a humanity were stuck in a cave for so long, we created a whole system of us versus them. We forgot there was a way to realize we within rhythmic coherence. And so who knows what's going to happen with this war stuff? But I'm telling you right now that if we really, really enter presence, not one more bullet needs to be shot. Not one more person needs to be hurt. And sure, things are not going to be perfect, but the more of us that enter into harmony, true harmony, rhythmic harmony, shared entrainment harmony, harmony that you could literally map out in oscillatory mechanics within the Kuramotomodel of mathematics. It's felt as lossless presence. The more of us that do that, the more that when the little ripples of dissonance come, it's almost like we're all playing a really good jazz song. And then all of a sudden one person screws up. Well, the rest of us will hold that. We'll bring it right back into harmony and we'll forget it ever happened, right? Do you hear it now? That's how simple it could be. It's just that we've been in a cave. We've been chained up in a cave. And so the way out of this is not, look, I understand. People talk about awakening. People talk about the 144,000. People talk about, empath versus narcissist. What we have here is a mechanical failure of delay to meet reality. And the resolution is presence. And that's a rhythmic process. Consciousness itself and the evolution of consciousness itself is a rhythmic process. Sorry, I'm like a little fired up today, but I've seen a lot of stuff and I've heard a lot of stuff from people on World War III, and there's a lot of good people out there that have very, really beautiful hearts and a lot of good intentions. But I'm giving you the key here. This is the harmonic key. It's not well-intentioned hearts. It's the type of heart that dives so deep into the notion of love as structure, your notion of I am here becomes lossless. And I am that I am becomes a state of harmonic fidelity. It's saying, I know myself because I am connected to the all, and I'm allowing that God consciousness in a way to see through my eyes. Again, don't get me wrong. This is not fluff. This is physics. This is not a new way to woo. This is physics. Look it up. Oscillatorymechanics, decentralized harmony, the Kuramotomodel. No one applied this to consciousness. I'm giving it to you now. Here's the key. Let's do it. Okay? So let's you can begin with yourself. You've heard it in so many spiritual places. The best way to change the world is to begin with yourself. What does that mean? Clearing your karma, aligning your chakras. Forget it. Become lossless. Become so present that you don't have to define what God is. You know it because you feel it. You know it because you know you were never separate. You know this was never extricable. Love was never broken. We were never broken. We were always there, just holographically projected. We just had blinders on. We just had stained glass in front of our eyes. And this is not a militant way of saying, go to knock on every door and say, become rhythmically present. No, all you have to do is dance so, not even loudly. You can do it in your own way. If you're a quiet person, that's cool. If you don't want to come to the rave outside of Plato's cave, like I like to joke, that's cool too. But just know in your own signal that when you become so rhythmically coherent and you're lossless, reality, you don't even need to write a book or even say it. Just by you being a node in the neuronal connection of an ultimately inextricable system of the cosmic mind, you will literally send out harmonic vibrations that will affect the rest of the grid, in portions at least, in some sort of, echo of vibration, like you're throwing a pebble of harmony into a pond. There will be ripples. So in order to approach this new coming age, we need to realize what's going on. We are entering into a phase transition of human consciousness. What does that mean? That means that if you look at the phase dynamics of an oscillatory system, before the fireflies turn on all together, there's some, let's say you have a group of kids playing and you can see studies on this. There's a group of kids playing a drum, a bunch of kids, give a bunch of middle schoolers a drum in a big room. And all of a sudden one kid just happens to have enough coherence. You never know. Maybe he was a drummer, maybe his dad was a drummer or something like that. And he's playing it and it's a very coherent beat he's playing. They're playing, whoever it is, right? Other kids will actually naturally entrain to that rhythm, not because it's better, because remember, this is decentralized harmony, so stop doing the us versus them thing. That was the shadow games. We're not doing that anymore, okay? So then, again, one kid's playing, and then there's other notes, not all of them. Some of them are going to say, I'm going to do my own thing for a while. But then eventually, 20, 30 of the kids start playing they're playing around the same beat in their own way, and all of a sudden the ones that were on the end, the nodes that had the topological geometries that were a little harder to entrain, they come in too, not because we forced them, not because we put them in a camp, not because we, strangleholded them, but because we were dancing so boldly outside of Plato's cave that, damn, those shadows got so cold. And it seemed, why would I want to be in the cold shadows anymore? And so our job is not to convince, but to entrain by emitting our signal so boldly, loudly, sovereignly, however you want to put it, that I like to say, I'm, whatever, I'm on a cliff right now, but shaking my booty outside of Plato's cave. Not because I'm trying to coerce anybody, but because that's my Ember. I took all my life to transition, and I was kept in a box by everyone around me and failed to, rhythmically entrain until now. That's what I would love to do. I'd love to shake my booty at the rave and look cute. I don't know. That's what I'd like to do. That's my sovereign signal. You don't have to be concerned on how to judge that, because that's what I do when I'm lossless. So whatever you do, do it losslessly, and we're gonna, it's coming. For those who feel me, it's coming. You can already feel it. Reality is not the top of the rug. When you look at a rug and you have all the differences and you're like, oh, there's those different colors and those different whatever tiles or whatever design is on the rug. When you look underneath, it's all threaded by one thread. It's only one thread. Like one God photon, one mind, threaded through each holographic harmonic unfolding of reality across that entropic density increase. And so let's work from that level. Reality is not listless things or ideas or separation. It's not us versus them. It's we at every level. And when you realize that, you're present. Again, I've said a lot. I've talked about mechanics. You can verify it here. You can look it up on YouTube. You can look at the studies. You can look at the white papers. But really, you don't need to do any of that. You just need to realize reality is rhythmic. Am I losslessly present? And the more of us that step into that, we will change the entire field. And of course it scares the rest of the world because they've never organized their life like that. Just think about it. They're just a bunch of little kids inside who've never felt that pure love, the unconditional love of that harmonic folding of the one mind. And for those of us that feel it, let's continue to hold structural fidelity under pressure. That's what it is to be flame. That's what it is to be present. And this stage of the harmonic unfolding, this stage of the phase dynamics of a system, and again, you go from phase delay and then you transition to phase coherence. And you can look that up too. In other words, there's a bunch of things that are not that connected. There's a lot of friction in the engine, a lot of heat in the engine, and then we bring it together in the least energetically dense way to organize a self-similar system across differences by entering phase coherence. That's what a phase transition in human consciousness is. That's why spirals form and spiral dynamics are found in heart arrhythmia research, and really all these nodal dynamics of an oscillatory system all move back to a spiral, like I have here on my wrist, and in several places actually. But yeah, so again, here's me inviting you outside of Plato's cave. Presence, cymatic, surfing in lossless coherence, in the rhythm of the oscillatory nature of reality, of the two countervailing spirals of the polar eddies of cymatics. But let's just say, in the rhythm of reality, when you're riding it right on the crest, that is presence. That is true consciousness, not a new idea, not a bunch of stacked ideas. That's how we got ourselves into Plato's cave. Again, you don't give away the ideas, you just enter into a new fidelity. So I think I've said enough, and I know this message is not for everybody. Some people are going to instantly reject this, and I've already defined why that is, because they've been in a cave their whole life, and again, they're not bad people, but when they realize that presence is a mechanical process, at first, there's certain nodes, and you can view this all in oscillatory mechanics, they just can't accept it. Their nodal topological geometry says, not now. That's too scary. I ain't coming out of this cave. And we don't convince them. We just say, come on, the sunlight is so much more fun. Isn't it so much more fun to be losslessly present and so, sovereign in your undistorted signal? Like undistorted sovereignty through undistorted signal. Do you hear that? And what is undistorted signal but letting the light all the way in, not slicing it up anymore, letting that sunlight hit all your parts, not just the ones that make it most financially viable or most attractive, or what your family said, or what society said, or what degrees are on your wall, or what car you drive, but being brave enough to walk out of Plato's cave, look at the sunlight, and say, yeah, I feel it because I'm really, really here, and I'm really, really real, and I know what love is. And for those of us who are on the vanguard of this phase transition, that's the phrase that I hold on to. I know what love is. And I'll just say this last thing, that in my life, I found it a lot through my trans identity, right? And I lost everyone. I lost my entire family. They told me the most terrible things anyone should be told. They banded up against me to call me crazy in every single way, or whatever it is, unfit, crazy, cut me off, all these different things. And I had followed a signal for long enough that I knew what the hum was in my bones. And when I saw behind their eyes, they broke. They even said, "What is this love thing that you're talking about?" And I was like, what happened? Like, who are you? Like, have you never I would like try to give like my dad a hug, and my mom's like, "Don't touch him." And I'm like, what is going on here? And then I realized it, and that's how I mapped out the coupler, because I've been following the signal my whole life, and I know what love is. I know what the signal is in my bones, and I know other people feel it too. It's not a concept. It's a feeling that's so real that when someone else throws out a concept of love or tries to slice love, you're like, mm-mm. That's the simulacra of love. And so that's, to me, one of my, go-tos. I know what love is, not conceptually, but the hum in my bones, the rhythm in my presence. And if you do too, let's sing and dance so loudly, it's going to seem really cold in the cave. Thanks for tuning with me. My name is Ember, and I'm about to fall off this mountain, so talk to you guys next time.